talking about here on my channel right now. It's all about Justin Baldoni and Blake Lively's.
I've been traveling for the holidays, but I've gathered so much wild information that I had to sit down and deliver it immediately. We've got newly unsealed deposition details from Justin Baldoni. So scandalous that I genuinely have to save them for the second half of the episode because YouTube would nuke this video in a heartbeat if I opened with it. Trust me, the spice level is off the charts. We're also going to talk about what Not Actually Golden, the attorney covering this case on TikTok, has been saying. She now believes Ryan Reynolds himself is behind a burner account that has been getting her content pulled down. These are massive, shocking claims, and she isn't the type to throw accusations lightly. On top of that, we've got a timeline that exposes some extremely suspicious behavior from members of the cast. Actions that seem to connect directly to Blake Lively and Ryan Reynolds working behind the scenes to protect their Hollywood futures. It's dramatic, messy, chaotic, and it all starts right now. My Patriots aren't playing today, they're on Monday Night Football, so I thought, why not give you this deep dive? And after this video, I'll have a Candace Owens update too. A new investigative report has landed that partially supports her, but not entirely. That's coming next. But for now, let's get into the real meat of this situation. Earlier this week, our friend Lauren Needy said something important. Blake Lively is still dragging Andy from Popcorn Planet through the court system, apparently to punish him for his upcoming documentary. Lauren participated in the documentary herself and emphasized that Andy works completely above board. Creating a documentary is not a crime. Crew members speaking about what happened on set is not a crime. Yet somehow Blake was able to use the courts to wreak havoc on people simply for speaking. She withdrew her subpoena for Lauren months ago, but Andy is still dealing with the fallout. And this documentary is going to be interesting because it isn't sanitized by PR companies or studio handlers. It's independent, which means it's going to be honest, which means it's probably not going to reflect well on Blake at all. And that's just one part of it. Blake and Ryan aren't just focused on Andy. They're going after multiple people in the online commentary space. We'll get into Not Actually Golden in a moment, but first you need to see the newly unsealed timeline. This timeline is complicated, full of initials, quick notes, and events that were never publicly discussed, but it finally reveals what so many suspected from the beginning. The coordinated, calculated unfollowing of Justin Baldoni by the cast was not spontaneous. It wasn't random. It wasn't organic. And it wasn't because he was a creep. It looks very much like a planned move, orchestrated by Blake Lively, with Ryan Reynolds backing her up behind the scenes. Remember, when a whole cast unfollows their director all at once, 99 times out of 100 it makes the public assume the director did something awful. That unfollow wave practically destroyed Justin Baldoni's reputation before anyone even heard his side. But what really happened? Let's go to June 13th, 2024. Book Bonanza in Texas. Blake Lively, Colleen Hoover, Brandon Sklenar, Isabella Ferrer, and producer Alex Sachs all attend. Sony did not know Brandon and Isabella were going. Blake personally paid for their airfare and hotel. And let's be real, nothing in Hollywood is free. When someone flies you out, feeds you, houses you, pays for your events, they're expecting something back. Maybe not openly, but it's understood. After certain conversations between Alex Sachs and Brandon, Todd Black was told that none of the cast who attended with Blake would be doing any press with Justin Baldoni. That includes Brandon, Isabella, and Colleen. Isabella, playing the younger version of Blake's character, was extremely close with Blake at this time, even reportedly sleeping over at her house. Brandon, meanwhile, soon after all of this, signs with Ryan Reynolds' agency, one of the top agencies in the world. Coincidence? Maybe. Convenient? Absolutely. Next, the timeline shows that Baldoni confided in Colleen Hoover over dinner about the tension with Blake. Colleen then turned around and told Brandon everything. Later, Blake and Ryan used this to claim that Colleen felt uncomfortable, though the events suggest Colleen was very much in the center of all of it. She even attended Blake's personal friends and family screening alongside Bradley Cooper, Ryan, Sean Levy, and Gigi Hadid. For someone allegedly not involved, she was deeply involved. Colleen also told Justin's team she didn't want to be in the middle, but then placed herself smack in the middle repeatedly. Again, this is classic Hollywood survival behavior. Play both sides until you know who will win. Then there's the censorship. Blake and Ryan's pressure campaign against creators. Andy from Popcorn Planet is dealing with it. And now, according to Not Actually Golden, she believes she is dealing with it too. She discovered that TikTok silently removed the audio from one of her own videos, her voice, not music, without notifying her. And the only other time TikTok muted her videos was when she talked about the Vanzana situation, which is also connected to this broader narrative. Not Actually Golden says multiple people have messaged her claiming Ryan Reynolds is known for using burner accounts. She believes one of the accounts that repeatedly harassed her, Lauren ADHD, was actually him. She didn't want to say it out loud at the time, but now that her video was forcibly muted, she's convinced. She says when she said, "Listen, Lauren," in that video, she was thinking, "Listen, Ryan," but avoided saying it publicly to stay professional. Now, she's done being quiet. And honestly, if you were Ryan Reynolds trying to clean your image, you wouldn't attack the loud, chaotic accounts. You'd target the competent, trusted ones. The ones rising fast. The ones people believe. You'd remove their content silently. No notifications. No estriques. Just gone. That's how you manipulate the narrative long-term. Meanwhile, Justin Baldoni's deposition paints an entirely different picture of the weight comment scandal. Not Actually Golden reveals a major detail. The confrontation where Ryan Reynolds allegedly dressed Justin down for asking Blake's trainer about her weight happened in April 2023, pre-production. There wasn't even filming yet. And Justin's explanation is that he had a hernia and needed to know for a lift sequence, which Blake's team later pretended didn't exist. The accusations made against Justin in the press, fat shaming, prolonged kissing, using the word sexy, sexual harassment, when pulled apart, don't hold up. But in headlines, they sound damning. And Blake's team took full advantage of that. Add to this that TMZ quietly edited their article to minimize Taylor Swift's presence during Ryan's confrontation with Justin. Originally, the article said Taylor and Hugh Jackman were right there watching Ryan unload on Baldoni. After PR stepped in, TMZ updated the article to say Taylor walked in at the very end and had only just been introduced to Justin for the first time. The spin is real. The influence is real. The power being used behind the scenes is massive. And then we get into the newly released deposition pages, graphic details about discussions between Justin and the intimacy coordinator regarding how to portray sex scenes from the female gaze, Blake reacting strongly, Justin responding with personal anecdotes, and how those conversations were twisted later. There's a lot more to go through, but we'll stop there for now. The details continue to get more graphic, more complicated, and more revealing. Explosive turn, because the newly unsealed deposition pages don't just fill gaps. They completely flip the narrative Blake Lively's team has been pushing for months. These pages reveal the parts everyone suspected existed but were never allowed to see. They show Justin Baldoni in a series of intense, awkward conversations with the intimacy coordinator that were meant to create authentic, not exploitative romantic scenes. But the way Blake's team later reframed these conversations makes it look like Justin was the one acting inappropriately. When you actually read the deposition, however, you see something very different. You see a director desperately trying to navigate a project with an actress who wanted control over every detail, from costuming to lighting to emotional beats, while studio executives scrambled behind the scenes trying to keep the film on schedule. One section describes Justin discussing the importance of showing romance from a woman's perspective and referencing his own experiences to explain why certain camera angles matter. These are the kinds of conversations directors have every day. Intimacy coordinators exist specifically so these discussions can be handled safely. But because of the tension between Blake and Justin at the time, every comment he made was later interpreted in the worst possible way. The documents show that Blake didn't initially react strongly. The conflict seemed to escalate only after she realized she wasn't getting the kind of control she wanted over the project. Suddenly, moments that were completely normal for film production were reframed as inappropriate, and stories began spreading through the cast. Stories that were exaggerated, twisted, or completely misinterpreted. Another eye-opening detail. Multiple crew members testified that Blake would bypass the traditional chain of command and directly override decisions Justin made. Sometimes she would go straight to Sony. Sometimes she would go straight to producers. Sometimes she would gather cast members privately and explain scenes in ways that differed from the director's actual instructions. Every time Justin tried to enforce boundaries, the situation escalated. And the timeline shows that Ryan Reynolds became more and more involved as the tension grew. Initially, he was simply trying to support Blake emotionally. But later, the documents suggest he began intervening in creative decisions, conversations with producers, and even the editing process. That's an enormous red flag. Actor spouses do not get a seat at the table unless someone is actively letting them in. One producer admitted in the deposition that Ryan had very strong opinions about how the film should portray certain character dynamics. Another producer said Blake was visibly upset when anyone pushed back against her ideas. The court documents suggest that Justin tried multiple times to resolve things privately. Meetings, calls, mediated discussions, but each time, the conflict grew more intense. By the time filming wrapped, the relationship was so fractured that both sides were preparing for legal fallout before the movie even entered post-production. And then came the unfollow storm, the coordinated mass unfollowing that destroyed Justin's public reputation overnight. The newly unsealed timeline reveals exactly how calculated it was. A group dinner was held shortly before the incident. Certain cast members were present. Blake was present. A producer was present. Conversations at that dinner directly referenced distancing from Justin. One of the cast members even asked if they should wait until morning to do it so it trends higher. That line is brutal. It shows the intent wasn't about safety or discomfort. It was about impact, optics, public narrative, destroying someone cleanly and quietly. The moment they unfollowed him, the internet filled in the blanks. Fan pages speculated. TikTok exploded. Reddit convinced itself that Justin was some kind of predator. And because Justin was under NDA at the time, he couldn't defend himself. Meanwhile, Blake and Ryan's silence created an enormous vacuum. A vacuum that filled itself with rumors and assumptions. The algorithm became their weapon without them lifting a finger. And they knew exactly what they were doing. Not actually Golden, in her analysis, explains that these kinds of unfollow campaigns are extremely rare in Hollywood. You do not see an entire cast unfollow their director at the exact same moment unless there is coordination behind the scenes. These actors were not acting independently. Some were young. Some were inexperienced. Some were financially dependent on future opportunities that Blake and Ryan could directly influence. And the timeline proves Blake had already taken certain cast members under her wing, dinners, flights, private screenings, personal meetings, grooming them into her circle. The moment she pulled the trigger, their loyalty kicked in. The depositions also reveal resentment brewing between certain producers. One producer admitted privately that Blake was overstepping to a level we hadn't anticipated. Another admitted that Sony executives were frustrated with her constant requests and rewrites. A third admitted Blake had threatened to walk away from the project if certain scenes weren't altered to fit her vision. The studio needed Blake for marketing. She had become too powerful to push back against. And that power imbalance became the heart of the problem. When Justin tried to make the story more emotionally nuanced, Blake pushed for a version that aligned with her own public persona. Softer, more controlled, more favorable. The battle became less about creative choices and more about ownership of the film. And when Justin refused to give her everything she wanted, she and Ryan began framing him as difficult and unprofessional. That is a known Hollywood tactic. Once you label someone difficult, their reputation collapses almost instantly. Then comes the most damning section of the documents, the screenshots,